Trails into Reverie does one of the best things that Cold Steel 1 and 2 were known for, splitting everybody up, having that sense of urgency by only having a smaller team that has to accomplish an important goal, while still having that all fun and I think important at this point trope, unexpected backup out of nowhere that saves the day. The goals that come from each of those teams in Reverie were united, and all of them were hitting it from different perspectives, a completely different perspective, honestly, to help progress the story forward and introduce new characters. It was incredible to see combinations of heroes who would never normally be together team up for incredible feats. These meaningful, heartfelt moments and closure of character arcs that have been going on for 10 plus years happen in this game. And that's what makes it so incredible. Trails into Reverie goes places and does things that will absolutely make Trails fans go, what in the world are they doing? Are we really taking the stakes this high? This series is known for escalating quickly. That's true, but I don't think I have ever experienced such insanely quick escalations. Literally had my heart thumping out of my chest because I was processing what was going on. Here's the thing though, Trails into Reverie is not a great place to start. In fact, in my opinion, this is the worst place to start. It's a love letter from Falcom to fans who want to see their favorite characters from the last 20 years finally have some closure and experience the ultimate form of the retiring battle system. I'll tell you what, by the time I finished Reverie, my party was so strong that some of the final bosses on normal felt like a cakewalk, but we'll get to that in a bit. Reverie's also tough to review too, because ultimately you're not going to be playing this unless you're a massive fan of the Legend of Heroes series. So for really me, it's almost a retrospective at this point, me looking back on my experience with the game and what I loved about it. This is one of those titles that diehards looking for one last hurrah with the Liberl Embracers and the special support section and Class 7 will actually have. Watching Reen, Lloyd, and Estelle and their friends on one last adventure for a little while was great. Seeing Crossbell finally become independent and Reen find closure for his role in the Great Twilight. It's also a redemption arc for one who would have done Zemiria much harm. If you've never played through the series before, if you have not played Reverie yet, and you do not know who C is, let me encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and head on to the next video. However, I want to talk about it. So here's your warning. I think the most powerful part of this game is the redemption of Rufus Albarea. There's this scene inside the Reverie Corridor that actually really struck me, where Gaius and Rufus are talking about falconry and the fact that Baron Schwarzer, Reen's adopted father, taught Rufus all he knew about it. Gaius made a comment about how he'd love to practice falconry with Rufus, and Rufus says something to the effect of, "You're serious? You're not just trying to be diplomatic? I'll take you up on that someday." The most meaningful part of Reverie, in my personal opinion, is the introduction of Swin, Nadia, and Lapis, and the redemption of Rufus Albarea. The writing of Lapis Rosenberg's and Rufus Albarea's father-daughter relationship is, in my opinion, some of the best writing in the Trail series. Like all of our heroes before, Rufus finally gets to do something that, well, is almost a trope in and of itself. He has the opportunity to go on a journey with an interesting, if not the most interesting combination of characters ever, and ends up discovering who he ultimately should be. And I tell you what, that combination of characters really began to strike me. What Falcom decided to do with Rufus' team. Now I'm reviewing this game and making this video right now, having already gone through most of Trails Through Daybreak. And what I find very interesting is in Rufus's group, we have the inclusion of Ren Bright as one of the party members. And you really actually see where that goes in Daybreak as she ultimately begins to walk her own path, independent of Estelle and Joshua, but not independent in the sense that she's turned into this, anti-hero or anything, kind of like Swin, Nadia, and Rufus become. Not an anti-hero, but kind of that morally gray, sort of vigilante vibe. That's not really Rin, but she does walk into the shady underworld confident, with her head held high, and bring her own version of heroism and chaos into the mix. One of the things that is interesting about Reverie that I love, but I also hate, is the combat system. It nails it. It's the perfect version of the combat system that we've seen up until this point. It's the perfect strategy of turn-based, clever use of abilities, all the crafts, everything that we have talked about in all of these reviews up until this point. Everything I love about this series. And the crossroads system allows you to switch between Reen, Lloyd, and Rufus. And it does affect combat directly because Reen's team and Lloyd's team and Rufus' team have a completely different way in many respects of handling the situation because they have very unique power types, very unique abilities, like a different way of approaching combat based upon who their characters are. And so it adds for lots of variety. And then inside the True Reverie Corridor, and this is the part I actually don't like. Like, as a theory, I love the True Reverie Corridor. As a storytelling device, I love the True Reverie Corridor, but it gets grindy, particularly in the end game where you're just going through level after level of monsters and really honestly needing to grind to make it through some of the end pieces, running through the same floors over and over, doing the same things over and over again. It got just a little bit old. However, it is a place of endless customization, and that's really cool. It's a unique dungeon. You can train and level up and experiment with team compositions that you never thought that you would see before. You can create your dream teams across all the Trail Saga, seeing Estelle, Lloyd, and Reen fight together. There are customization options that are absolutely endless. In fact, that was honestly some of my favorite parts, was seeing the combinations that they would give you. In the True Reverie Corridor, there are these jewels that you can unlock that allow you to, kind of in a gachapon machine sort of experience, unlock new characters for the Reverie Corridor, unlock some of the side missions and mini games, and unlock new items. And what they really want you to do is experiment. They give you these tasks and say, hey, do so many crafts or links with these characters. And so they actually encourage you to earn more of these jewels to try all these different character combinations that would be a little bit unique. It also gives you the chance to play with characters you've never really gotten to play with before. They're still not out in the overworld, but they are in the True Reverie Corridor, and they are part of the post-game of Trails into Reverie. Then, of course, you have the bread and butter of the combat system, right? The crafts, the S-crafts, like I've mentioned before. Reverie makes S-crafts really more dynamic than ever. They can almost constantly be unleashed, and they are critical to success. You need to be overpowered, and you need to really feel kind of the power creep and the power fantasy of this game to beat the post game of Trails into Reverie. And then, of course, the orbment system is back, and Reverie really redefines this system one final time, allowing tons of freedom to experiment with different builds, whether turning Reen into a melee powerhouse or making Lloyd a defensive wall. I actually, for the first time, made evasion tanks. Fee and Noel, shout out to you two. You were my evasion tanks the entire way through. I loved that experience, having never done it up until this point. I'm kind of sad. I'm playing Daybreak right now, and I'm a little sad that I don't really feel the need to have one, nor is there a really great way to set one up, at least not that I've found yet. I may experiment with that just a little bit more. And of course, having all the battle linking and follow-up attacks and special attacks and brave orders and burst mode and all these different things, it really makes up for a great battling experience. It is a battle showcase. It is the celebration of this system that they've been refining over the last 4 games, really. And the boss battles really ask you to think strategically, much more strategically than they ever have. There were some times halfway through the game where I was absolutely being trounced over and over, and I realized I have got to buff, I have got to break, I have got to have an evasion tank. I've got to actually use some of these systems that are put into place, because when I got to the end of the game and the main story, my characters were very powerful. It was because up until that point, they had pushed me to try new things that I had never actually done before. And then the True Reverie Corridor also provides for you this opportunity to experience all of these unique mini games. You get to unlock these stories, these vignettes that you can go and re-experience things from characters past. You actually see some things that lead into the future that tie into Trails Through Daybreak, which I think is absolutely fantastic. It was a really unique experience to see some of these perspectives and play some of them out. Like there's one particular one where you're going on vacation in Ymir with the Bright family, and you find very quickly that the Bright family has a hard time going on vacation. They're often fighting and investigating no matter where they go, but they had a good time doing it. Or you figure out how Risha, Swin, and Nadia actually know each other. Or you see a little bit more about characters you've already been curious about, a little bit more about Arkansas, a little bit more about people and places and things that I don't want to spoil yet because it ties directly into Daybreak. A little bit more about Ouroboros. It sets up the mystery and unleashes your curiosity. As I've mentioned before, my favorite thing about this series is the story, is the characters, is the experience. And Trails into Reverie represents the last 5 years of gaming for me. I've played through every single one of them in pretty quick order over the last 5 years. And it also represents saying goodbye to so many characters I've grown to love over the years, although I'm certain that we'll hear from some of them again. I don't really know how to put into words exactly how this whole experience made me feel. Watching the ending credits for Trails into Reverie and experience the final bits of content, watching the photos go by and seeing characters we know and love, both new and old, have a moment of peace and joy brought up this real sense of nostalgia for me. Ultimately, I can't even begin to describe the rush of emotions that came over me as I realized the story of 9 very special games had come to an end. But ultimately, seeing Rufus able to redeem himself and find a path forward was powerful, meaningful to me. It was something I wasn't expecting, and how they wrapped it up was really a wow experience. Ultimately, play Legend of Heroes. Don't be afraid of something different, something big, something grand. I don't regret the hundreds of hours I put into this series. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.